Dr. Shaw is a strategy and policy professor at the Naval War College. He holds a PhD and an MA in military history and is the author of the Ethiopian Adal War from 1529 to 1543, Illusions of Freedom, Thomas Merton and the Jacques Ellul on Technology and the Human Condition, and the 3-volume War and Religion, an Encyclopedia of Faith and Conflict. We are so thrilled to have him on board with us. Once again, a big welcome to Dr. Shaw.
Well, thank you, Aaron, for that generous introduction. I'd like to say if you can't get to sleep, put this lecture on, you'll be out like a light. Hopefully that won't be the case. Folks, I'm going to present to you a much shorter version of a lecture that I have given before. Normally at the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, our lectures are 3 hours long. Don't worry. We're on vacation. I've cut this down. And I am, though, going to remain true to something that we do at the college, and that is when we present an idea, we do it in a argumentative fashion. In other words, I'm not just going to talk about this battle, but I'm going to suggest that it was the greatest battle ever fought. Now, that might seem a little bold. I know we have passengers from the UK and the US who might be thinking, well, what about Waterloo, Hastings, Yorktown, sorry for the Brits, Gettysburg for the Americans, that kind of thing. I'm going to suggest this is the greatest battle ever fought. So why would I make such a radical claim? Well, for a couple reasons. One is I hope that you disagree. And that makes for better question sessions later in the Explorer's Lounge or wherever we happen to meet on the ship and you want to talk about it and suggest, well, I think this battle was a greater battle. That's how I hope it goes. But I really do think this was the greatest battle ever fought for these reasons. It wasn't the largest battle. It didn't have the largest land mass involved, like something like the Battle of Dresden, Napoleon's battle. It wasn't something like the Battle of Kursk in the Second World War. But the consequences of this battle created the world that we live in. A direct result of the fall of Constantinople, which I was reminded once, you should say that there's now Istanbul, so everyone knows I'm talking about Istanbul. The fall of Constantinople created the modern world. It ended the Byzantine Empire, which we heard about from Neil yesterday in the Ottoman Empire lecture. The fall of Constantinople led to the age of exploration. Christopher Columbus would not have done what he did if the Turks hadn't captured this city. Period. The Renaissance was put into overdrive after this city fell to the Turks. A sense of unity in Europe, where Christianity and Islam are now juxtaposed in a battle at the time, seemed like one of annihilation for many centuries. And then there are some contemporary implications that we'll talk about at the end of the lecture. So, I have a tendency to go down rabbit holes and tangents and that kind of thing. I'm going to try to stick to this outline, and hopefully I won't do that, and we'll get out in time to really enjoy that seafood buffet, which I know I'm going to. We'll talk about the history of this fabulous city. We already got a lecture on the Ottoman Empire, so I'm just going to touch on a few things. I'll talk about the siege of the city, talk about the battle, and then the historical impact. Simple, civilized, far less than 3 hours. So here we go. The history of the city of Byzantium, which is this city also, around 700 BC, probably around the time Troy was founded, as we learned today from our cruise director. This city, Byzantium, this pointer is tricky, but I've circled it in blue. There's where we are. The pink areas of this map, this is the ancient Greek world, okay? It's the world of Homer and the world of the Athenians and the Spartans and Aristotle. And you might notice, the Black Sea, the Ukraine up here. The Greeks relied on trade to survive. If you've ever been to Santorini or Mykonos, there's not a lot of big wheat fields around, right? They don't have that. So they're bringing wheat down from the Ukraine through the Bosporus to Athens, to the cities. They're bringing it up from Egypt. They're bringing it in from Sicily. Of course, they're bringing wine and grapes, olives. It's an empire based on trade, as all empires are. But this little city here, Byzantium, it's sort of on the fringes. It's not a central city by any means. It's just an outpost. You pay your tariffs, get a little shore time if you're a sailor. That's it. Up until the pivotal year, roughly 330 AD. The Roman Empire at this time, and now we're going light speed through history, folks, sorry. You're probably thinking, well, we just jumped 1,000 years. How did that happen? Sorry, we're going to keep it quick. 1,000 years after the founding of the city. I mean, imagine that. The place has been around 1,000 years, 1,700 years ago. So in 330, the Roman Empire, as any history major would know, it's shaky. The Roman Empire is starting to crumble a little bit. And Constantine, the emperor, decides, well, too tenuous in Rome to manage the entire empire. So I'm going to move the capital to the east, and I'm going to create a new capital, and I'm essentially going to have, not officially, but two Roman empires. And he, as Neil pointed out yesterday, humbly names this new city after himself. And when you're the emperor, you can do whatever you want. Now, this fabulous picture shows a lot, and I'm going to spend some time here. So this is where we just left. This is now the Galata port. There's a tower that you may have seen. It wasn't this one from the year 330. It's a Genoese tower from later. And here is the city as it might have looked around 330. There's a bazaar and an open space here. If anyone got down to this public park, it's gorgeous. That was there in 330. These trees, okay, they're not the same trees, but it was forested then, it is now. Here's the port. I would imagine if we were on the deck right now, we're probably sailing down around here. But there it is, in all its splendor. And I can tell you, folks, that as Rome declined, this city is the jewel of the world. It's the jewel of the entire world. We saw a little bit of it today. Anyone that went into Istanbul, I'm sure, left thinking, this is a fabulous city. It's a fabulous city. And Constantine made sure that the Roman Empire had as its capital in the east a fabulous gem of a city. Now, in the year 330, in this part of the world, the barbarians are not marauding. Oops, I just went that way. They're not marauding around to the same degree as the Huns, the Avars, the Goths, the Franks, the Gauls, the Celts are going back and forth across the Western Roman Empire, causing havoc. Here, a little more peaceful. So there's a set of walls just off the left side of the slide, but they're modest. They're the Constantinian walls. You may have seen some of them, but honestly, they're kind of like maybe a billboard on it. They're not that impressive. We're going to see some other walls, though, that you're going to be amazed. Again, we're only jumping 100 years on this slide. Here's the city. By 413, yeah, those barbarians, they're a little bit of a pain. So let's build some bigger walls, and the Emperor Theodosius orders the construction of new walls, and they're going to surround all of Constantinople. We're not going to take any risks of some tricky barbarians, making rafts or something, and we're just going to secure the city. It's national security, 413. So new walls are constructed. Now, I'm guessing as you all came in from the airport, you probably came this way, north of the Golden Horn to Galataport. Did anyone go through a gate that might have been the Theodosian walls? Maybe if you took a cab. Did anyone see the Theodosian walls? Okay, you did see them. Did you knock it down by chance? Because I saw you last night. Okay. They're unbelievable. I've got some pictures of them. I don't want to steal my own thunder. But these walls are going to, if you remember the first slide, 1453, the city falls. They're starting in 413. That means I'm not a math guy, but that's 1,100 years of the walls doing what they're meant to do. Another thing that's constructed in the 6th century, this time, Emperor Justinian. Again, now in this era, these are Byzantine emperors. Okay, Rome has collapsed. Okay, I know it's a historical, controversial subject. 476 AD is generally the end of the Roman Empire in the West. Rome is sacked by the barbarians, Gaul and Spain. Disintegrates into disorder. We call it, if you remember back to 6th grade, as, that was the Dark Ages, or whatever it was called. Not so in the East. The Byzantine Empire is the Roman Empire in the East. It's just called the Byzantine Empire because it's really Greek in nearly all of its manifestations. And it was built originally on Byzantium. So Byzantine has become the name of this empire. And in 532, the Emperor Justinian, he actually goes into Italy and tries to restore Roman rule, so to speak. He doesn't do very well at it. But he does do something that did anyone go inside the Hagia Sophia? Wow. We saw hundreds of people in line, couldn't get in. It was probably a tour, I'm imagining. Was it impressive? Okay. It's unbelievable. Now, it's a little different today than it was before 1453. Notice in this picture there's no minarets. This is before Islam is even in the world in 532. But this is built as the Church of Holy Wisdom, a Christian church that is, I think, probably the largest stone structure on earth. I think. There may be others, but pretty impressive. I think that goes without saying. So there it is, and that still remains today. There's some controversy around it. We'll talk about that at the end. All right, we're going to make another huge jump into a topic which I'm guessing most people are like, what the heck is that? What is this thing? The break between the Eastern and Western Christian churches. Okay? 1054, a hardcore history person would be like, yeah, of course, that's the schism of 1054. In a nutshell, when Hagia Sophia was beginning to be built, there were 5 bishops of the Christian church. One in Rome, one in Constantinople, one in Jerusalem, one in Alexandria, Egypt, and one in Hippo, Carthage. Now, when Islam spread as rapidly as it did, 3 of those bishops are out. They're gone. So left only 2, Bishop of Rome, Bishop of Constantinople. Yeah, they're Christians. They're holy men. They don't get along. They like to obtain and maintain power. So you might have read in a history book, this was about this break between the 2 churches happened because They couldn't agree on celibate priesthood. They couldn't agree if you should use unleavened bread for communion or the wording of the Nicene Creed. No, no, no. It's about power, plain and simple. And this break has not been resolved since this time. Hence, Roman Catholic Church, Eastern Orthodox Church in its various manifestations. So, 1054. This leads to big problems, not just in the church, but in the secular world as well. One example of which is this horrible incident in 1182. Now, Latins is a little bit of a pejorative term in this case. These are the Western Christians. We would probably refer to them as Roman Catholics. It was way before Protestantism, so they're Roman Catholics. They're the Western Christians. Well, they were very good at business practices. They're very good at that. It's too early to say they're capitalists, but they're thinking that way. They manage trade. Think of the Venetians, the Genoese. You could even use the term French at this point. Couldn't really use the term Spanish. Too early for that. But these Western Christians are really good at business. The Eastern Christians haven't quite picked up on that yet. And so it becomes apparent to the people living here that, hey, we don't have the good jobs. How come I'm packing a bag of flour and this Genoese gets to sell it and make a profit? I'm going to kill him. Well, 60,000 Latins are put to the sword. That's a gentle picture there. It was much more gruesome than that. And then another 4,000 people that were hiding were drug out of their or their cellars and sold to the Ottomans as slaves. So again, this is not an argument about unleavened bread for communion or anything like that. They don't care about celibate priests. It's about power. And that's what everything has to do with in relation to this particular talk. So, Massacre of the Latins. I'm trying to draw a picture here that there's a break between the Christian world, and it's a fissure that is going to result in bad consequences for this city in 1453. Neil talked about this a little bit yesterday. This is a crusade. You might be thinking, oh, those are crusaders trying to free the Holy Land. You know, they're attacking Muslims. No, they're not. These crusaders are sacking Constantinople. This is an example of a dastardly plot that is known as the Venetian Crusade. Unless you're in Venice, then you call it the Fourth Crusade. They don't want to be remembered for this. These Christians have come to Constantinople, the greatest city in the world, the greatest city in Christendom, and sacked it, making up for that massacre of the Latins. You know, the leader of Venice, the Doge, paid for these crusaders who didn't have any money. So he said, hey, I'm a Christian. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to send you to Constantinople. First he sends them to Zadar, where they sack Zadar. And then he sends them to Constantinople. And he says, when you get there, you don't even have to go fight the Muslims. You just go into Constantinople, break up the town, put a couple people to the sword, and that will tamp down Constantinople's influence in the silk trade and the spice trade, putting Venice literally at the top of the totem pole. Unbelievably bad act on the part of the Venetians. But hey, they came out with 4 bronze horses that you will see at St. Mark's Cathedral. Now, the ones outside are replicas, but the real ones are inside. So, you know, this plundering and pillaging, we're going to talk about it again because it's the order of the day. That's what you do. That's what they did in those days. You plunder and you pillage. That's what you did. Some people still do. 1400, here we go. This is a computer-generated graphic. There were no drones in this era. This is looking at the city again. So here, we left here. This is Galata. That's what it was called then. It was Galata. This is the Golden Horn. It's a waterway. There was a bridge in this time. Here's the city itself. It's not the greatest depiction, but here's the Constantine walls, those first walls that Theodosius decided weren't adequate. Good thing he did. Here's the new walls, the Theodosian walls. And up here is it's outside the city. You either live in the city or you're a barbarian. You know, you're not a city dweller. You know, it's kind of still like that today in some places, right? So there it is, 1400. We're getting close to the Ottomans getting ready to make a big move. Oh, well, here we are, the Ottoman Empire. So bear with me on this slide. There's no quiz. Do not be afraid. 1450, Europe. In some senses, there's some similarity today, especially, up here, yep, poor Wales. They've been part of England for a good 700 years probably by now. Scotland, Ireland, yep, got it. Here's something weird. The Polish-Lithuanian Union. Not something we learn much about in school unless you live in Poland or Lithuania. Hungary. Much bigger then. Kingdom of Hungary. A Christian bulwark against Islamic expansion. Just ask Viktor Orban about that sometime. They're the fence, figuratively speaking at this time, to the Ottomans coming into Europe. France, yep, they're legit at this time. It's 1450. They're one of the first modern nation states. Then you have this weird, the Holy Roman Empire, which is neither Holy Roman or an empire. It's going to become Germany someday, way after our lecture is over, though. Don't worry about that. There's no Italy. It's the Kingdom of Naples. That's owned by the Habsburgs. City-states, all competing to outdo each other in art and literature in the Renaissance. Now, something really important here, if I can get this guy. Here we go. This is Al-Andalus. This is Muslim Spain. Has anyone been in any of the mosques? It's unbelievable stuff. But at the time, Christians weren't interested in looking at the art and the architecture. They wanted this gone. And, they were tolerant of, it's too hard to fight those guys. They're pretty good. We can deal with them later. But the fact that they're still there, I'm going to come back around to that towards the end of the lecture. Here's the Ottoman Empire. Now, if you'll notice, they're on both sides of Constantinople. But those walls keep them out of the city. The Byzantine Empire, you might be thinking, gosh, I don't see it on there. It's really Constantinople. It's about all they've got left. Notice, Venice, those sneaky guys, they came down here, they sacked Zadar, they took all these places into the Venetian Empire, more politely called the Venetian Republic, but it's an empire. Serbia, Bosnia, those guys are still on the map today, not you. You are, yep. And then you have the Ukraine and Russia. There's no line. There should be. So there you have it. This is the political situation in 1450. Well, there's a sultan down here in the Ottoman Empire, and his name is Mehmet. That's like John to us. It's probably the most common name in the Ottoman world for boys. Now, he was a crafty young guy, and his father wanted to make him sultan while Mehmet I was still alive. Very unusual. But Mehmet II was like, it's not cool, Dad. I don't want to do that. And so he says to his dad, if you're the sultan, come and lead your armies. If I'm the sultan, I hereby order you to come and lead my armies. That's cool. I mean, that is he should be the conqueror just for that. So he's got a lot of potential, right? You see that. He's talking to the Sultan. If it wasn't his son, head's coming off. You don't disobey the Sultan. So here he is. He gets this epithet after the battle. He's going to be known as Mehmet the Conqueror. That's not common. Yep, you have William. That's true. There aren't many sultans or kings who get this name. In fact, some of his contemporaries, some of Mehmet's contemporaries, for example, in Castile, Spain, Henry the Impotent. You know, if Henry the Impotent's armies are assembling, that's not scary. That's not scary. In Burgundy, Philip the Good. Come on. That you don't want that. You want the conqueror. And this is why I'm going to explain why he gets it. So, the Ottoman army. I say Ottoman, they're Turks, right? It's the Turks. But technically, a scholar or a historian, you shouldn't use Turks until 1923. Because it's the Ottomans. They're Ottomans. I know Neil explained this yesterday. So I say Ottomans. Their army was the finest army for many centuries. It declined precipitously. But in the 1450s, you did not want the Ottoman army approaching your territory. You did not want that. This is the amount of time they spend on their soup. That's your serious soldiers when you're carrying your soup with that kind of reverence. It's just soup. Bread. Around the Ottoman army are thousands of field kitchens. They're not eating hardtack and salt pork like many Western Christian armies. They have good food. You probably had some good food in town. That's what they were eating. They had good food. They had great logistics. And you're going to see some of the weapons, you're not even going to believe them. So, but the army itself was small. And that's the case for all armies at this time. You can't afford, even, Henry the Impotent, definitely those guys, they can't afford a huge standing army that's just milling around. First of all, they're likely to overthrow you. So you don't want a huge army. You want a small core of some elite troops, and then you build on that when you're going to go fight. So how do you build on it? Well, you promise people like these guys 3 days of pillage and looting. Hey guys, because there's all kinds of these tribesmen in the Balkans. And they're Muslim pastoralists. They're bored. 3 days of looting and pillaging, I'm in. I'll join your cause. What is the cause? I'm in, but what are you doing? And on a good day, one of these pastoralist tribes, they might sack a small farming village, walk away with a handful of potatoes and a chicken or something like, that's not that much. But when it's Constantinople, you're going to walk away with some serious bling. Gold, silks, jewelry of all kinds. So when the word goes around, these guys count me in, 50 or so thousand of these guys show up with Mehmet's army. The elite are the Janissaries. Now, this is a very interesting military organization. You may have gone into the bazaar today in town and seen some young men dressed in these kinds of costumes. The coolest hats of any soldier at this time. Trained, this is not the Battle of Gettysburg. These guys down here on the bottom are Ottoman Janissaries. Now, this guy's like, you guys are cowards. I'm going in, I'm taking off a head with my hand-to-hand weapon. And this was a very real belief amongst many troops at this time. Firearms, cowardly. I'm taking this halberd. Here's the guy behind him like, yeah, I've got a sword. I'm even more brave. It was a badge of honor. I'm going to use a knife. I'm going against my adversary in the old way. In fact, Douglas Stroyson believes the Janissaries' first standing army with firearms, with gunpowder weapons. Probably true. If there was a different one, it was probably a Chinese army or something like that. These Janissaries were, in almost every case, taken from Christian families that lived within the confines of the Ottoman Empire. They weren't, the families knew they were going to be giving the kid up, because either that or, lose your 3 donkeys and your horse. Oh, here, take my kid. So, that's how they did it. And they would come here, or not here, but they go into the Ottoman Empire somewhere. They would train, they would become Muslims. To them, little kid, no big deal. They'd get raised that way. But they would be the final shock troops. The Ottomans are in a battle. You let those irregular guys that think they're going to get to pillage and plunder, let them get killed first. Then you send in the Janissaries. And it was a very effective way of fighting. Very effective. All right. That's the buildup. Now we're going to talk about the siege and the battle and the implications. So, as I said earlier, I'm not a math person. I don't like numbers at all. And in the teaching of strategy, there's only one mathematical equation. Now, that I didn't say logistics. That's different. In strategy, it's strength equals force times will. You're not going to come up with an actual number ever. But think about it. Think about what's going on in Europe right now. Large army, smaller armies doing quite well because their morale is higher. American military experience has examples of where we were on the short end of this stick. So there it is. But in this case, I'm suggesting a change to this equation. Force times walls. Because we're going to look at some pictures of the Theodosian walls, and it's truly unbelievable. Now, there is a manifestation of will and morale on the Christian side. And it's basically in the form of one man who is so cool, he is in the Netflix series, Rise of Ottomans. Who's seen it? Oh, excellent. You have to watch it, folks. It is so good. This is Giovanni Giustiniani. Probably his real name. He's got a cool name. He's a knight. He's from Genoa. He probably ran a business in the Galata, which at this time is a Genoese trading colony. You see that tower? The little got a conical top? That's the Genoese tower from the trading colony. Notice that the Genoese are in Galata. They don't want to get massacred again. So they're on the other side of the water. That's where all the trade goes through. This is why it's the Galata port. It's still there. He's from one of Genoa's leading families. He could do whatever he wanted to do. He could be a trader on the Silk Road. But he's in it for a little pillage and plunder too. If I serve the Byzantine emperor, I might be richly rewarded. And he's literally the leader of the defense of the city. So wherever he is, the defenses are good. Because the emperor, Constantine the 11th, remember Constantine the 1st founded the city. There were emperors of other names, but the 11th Constantine, his empire's gone. He's not really up for the fight. But he's got this guy. And he's got these walls. Computer image. But these, there should even be a different word than walls. You think of, it's a wall. This is like a separate city. You could have thousands of people living in the walls. They're that amazing. You can't even get over the walls from the other side. They're impregnable from any direction. This is actual Theodosian walls in some part of Istanbul. Some of it might be restored, but that's how they would have looked. They started to be built in 413. I don't think anyone could build walls like that now out of stone. I don't think it could be done. There they are. That's real. It's unbelievable that Mehmet would think, I'm going to go capture this city. I'm going to take the city. So how does he do it? So again, here's Google Maps. Here is Galataport. Some people might have walked over, driven over this bridge. And here are the walls, still very visible as a boundary of the city. Now, anyone that drove in from the airport saw skyscrapers everywhere, right? They're not in Istanbul itself. They're up here, they're over here. That wall still defines the city, still defines it. How solid were they? Well, here on the left, these are some examples of unfortunate people who tried to capture the city. Repeatedly attacked. I mean, look at that. It's ridiculous. Oh, good try, guys. That's not going to do anything. That's not going to do anything. I've got a sword. Whoop. I'll just advance one slide. Here we go. April 6th, 1453. We've jumped ahead a little bit because all these forces are now in place. So here's Constantinople. Here's Galata. Well, there's the Viking Sky. I'm assuming we would have been right there when I gave this lecture, and I think if we look outside, probably we are. If you did look outside, and if it was 1453 right now, you would have seen a host of Ottoman naval vessels. Small, wooden, they have sails and oars. The Byzantine Navy, not a capable maritime force, is in the Golden Horn behind a chain. Yes, they had a chain that they could lower. This is an amazing technological feat in the 15th century. Enormous links of a chain crossing the entryway to the Golden Horn that you simply could not get past unless the Byzantines lowered the chain into the water. You pass over it. Oh, Ottoman ship coming. Raise it back up. Effective. Cowardly? I don't know. I'm not going to go that road. But their navy stays behind the chain. Now, granted, the Ottomans can't get in there, but if you think about it, they might not really need to. You know, you've got this Ottoman army. Now, the Janissaries are here. For any military geeks like myself, this is a cavalry symbol, the diagonal line. So this is your horsemen. Many of the horsemen are those plunderers. They're just hanging out. Like, I can't wait to get into the city for many reasons, many of which I'm not going to discuss. They want to pillage and plunder. That's what they were told. They don't care about it. It's not a jihad, right? There's no semblance. You don't need to say, oh, yeah, we're going to go in because of divine. You don't need that. You just say we're going to conquer Constantinople. That's all you need to do. And so here they are. And it's an impressive force. This is, okay, the Byzantine army is in here, but I shouldn't have put this many because they're outnumbered maybe 6-1 or so. So here they are. That's what it looks like. There's some Ottomans up here, just to make sure no supplies sneak down. So there it is, April 6, 1453. And, the Byzantines are up on the walls like, oh, this is not good. But, hey, no one's gotten over the walls yet. They'll probably lay siege. We'll have to eat rats like we did every time we're under siege. That's fine. They'll go away. Well, they brought these. Remember we showed you that little tiny cannon thing in that earlier? No, not the Ottoman artillery. This stuff, it's impossible today to imagine the reaction of a Byzantine soldier looking out and seeing that. Like, what is that thing? And there weren't just two. There were probably 50 or 60. These are ceremonial ones. The other ones you'll see in the next slide. But I just want to show you what the progression looks like. So here we are. Mehmet is making his way around his troops. he goes and inspires them and says, hey, you guys, hang with me. I'm guaranteeing you 3 days of pillage and plunder. You're going to get it. Just stay in place. Don't go pillage something back here while I'm waiting for you. I might need you to do something. I've got my Navy. Technically, that's not really the right term. They wouldn't have said that. It's a military force that's in a boat, not on land. That's a modern distinction. But I've got a large fleet of ships that's keeping supplies out, right? So they make sure they are eating rats in the city and their morale goes down. There we are. And you can see I put little stars here because they're firing those cannons at the wall. Now, it takes about 6 hours to reload a cannon of that size. But when you've got 50 or 60, you're making a lot of noise. Now, the shells don't explode. It's a common misconception, especially in Hollywood. The movie The Patriot, the American Revolution, exploded. No, they're big bowling balls. They just hit you, and you don't want to be hit by them, but these are designed to knock down these walls. Well, if the wall gets hit, yep, it could come down a little bit, but Justiniani is leading his men to pick the rocks back up and rebuild the walls as they're firing at them. It goes on for weeks. Eventually, some Byzantine soldiers dying of exhaustion. I'm eating rats, and I'm picking up heavy rocks all day. That's not a recipe for long-term success. So here we are. The weeks are going on. And I showed you some pretty big cannons, but not this big. How did they get them there? They came in by sea, and they put them together in this kind of a configuration. I mean, look at that thing. It's unbelievable. Some of these cannons are made by Christian gunsmiths. The Ottomans were very progressive in that regard. They would take anyone. Hey, build me a cannon, 3 days pillage and plunder for you in our next conquest. The cannonballs have another crane to load the cannon with. The amount of gunpowder, if you accidentally lit a match, whoops, I was going to do my hashish pipe, and look what happened. Not good. So it's very highly trained, and these are raining havoc. Nothing like this has ever been seen on the planet prior to this time. Yeah, the Chinese had some cannons. No, this is changing the way human beings conduct warfare. Okay. In April, so we're 2 weeks in, right? 2 weeks into the siege. Some Venetian ships, only 4, they sneak in. And they literally just sail. Remember I said the term Navy is not accurate. These are just ships told to make sure no one sneaks through. And what happens? They sneak through. They get up to the chain, they lower the chain. The Byzantines, the Venetian 4 ships go through. Remember, the Venetians don't really care that Constantinople's under attack. It's like, yeah, we don't like those guys anyway, but we should help them. So we'll send 4 ships. We've got some rotten pork. Send it to Constantinople. So they send these ships in. They get through, and the Sultan Mehmet is so mad. He whips the admiral 100 lashes, and even worse, makes him join the army. Like, your punishment is you're going to be standing up here with my soldiers. He would have probably rather had 200 lashes and gone back to his ship, because you don't want to be up here. As much of an advantage as they have, you don't want to be a foot soldier in the 15th century. So that happens. So Mehmet comes up with a plan. Remember, he's the Sultan. Whatever he says is going to happen. It's going to happen. So he looks at the situation. He says, all right, I can't cut the chain. It's impossible. I got to get my fleet into the Golden Horn. I want my troops to cut a path, use the trees as rollers, and drag the ships into the Golden Horn. Now, no one's going to say, well, the ships are too heavy, or that's dumb. The response is, okay, let's do it. So look at this picture. This is unbelievable. Now, first of all, ships are nowhere near that big. But look at these. Here's the soldier. Here's probably the admiral. Like, I shouldn't have let those Venetian ships through. You would think the sailors would have helped pull the ships. You would think. But it makes a much better picture with these guys. Like, yes, I'm in the Navy. This is so much better. And they literally drag the ships into the Golden Horn. I told you this was an unbelievable story. And that's what they do. So here we are. They're pulling these ships. Now, it didn't appear to me that this ground around us was all that flat. It's hilly, and there's a lot of trees. Just chopping down the trees probably took 10, 15,000 troops. You got to make them round and cut all the branches off, and then you're going to roll these ships. Where do you get that much rope? I mean, it's just unbelievable. But it really happened. And then all of a sudden, Mehmet's ships are in the Golden Horn. You talk about the will decreasing in the city is bad. No one's going to get through here again. And the Byzantine Navy, again, it's not helping the situation at all. So here we are. This is early May. But, you know, as cool as this was, those guys that signed up for pillage and plunder did not sign up to drag ships over land. So they're not that thrilled. You know, they could have had donkeys and potatoes and wine pillaged from other towns 10 times over, but they're pulling ships. So they all start to think, we're done. We're done. We're leaving. Mehmet makes one final gamble. He meets with his generals, serves them some rice, probably some other things, and he says, we're going in one more time. And the Janissaries are leading the charge. I'm committing the Janissaries. If the Janissaries fail, the Ottoman Empire crumbles. Because someone will overthrow the Sultan. It's all or nothing. All or nothing. Here it is. The artillery's firing. The troops are cheering. Huge drums are beating. Trumpets are sounding. Fires are burning all along behind the line for two reasons. One, to scare the Byzantines, and two, to make sure no one runs back. It's all or nothing. All or nothing. And here it is. Here they go. Into the walls, into the gates. The Byzantines, they have these little catapults. They're flinging stuff out. They're flinging dead bodies out. They're doing everything they can to just make them go away. Well, who's there too? Giovanni rides out of this. This is from the Netflix series. You got to watch it. It's great. He's like, okay, I'm going in. He knows this is glory. Even if he dies, there's no way he's not going to be remembered in history as one of the greatest soldiers of all time. Look at him. He's like, I got it. I got it. Doesn't matter if I get killed. It'd be better if I get killed and the city's saved. Even if it's conquered, here I am. Now, a lot of the Byzantine troops are like, we'll be on the walls supporting you. Go, Giovanni, go. They're just not in it anymore. So what happens? Remember I said strength equals force times will. He is the will. He's the will. He gets wounded. He gets dragged back into the city. The walls are crumbling. These are the guys that are like, hey, maybe I am going to get to pillage and plunder. This is looking good. Looking good. And boom, 29 May, 1453, there he is, entering the city, not in this orderly procession, I can assure you, because it's on, right? 3 days starts now. No one's got to watch. No one's got to watch. It's not going to be just 3 days. Hey, I was awake for 2 nights. It only feels like it's been 1 day. I'm pillaging for 2 more days. Or I just got here. I get 3 days from now. Maybe, or it's a Holy Week. I get 5 days. So it's a long time of plunder. And you don't want to be in the city. You don't want to be in the city when the plunder's going on. So people are swimming across the Golden Horn. They're riding like across the chain, trying to walk across the chain. It's horrible. It's horrible. Giovanni, though, he can't get out of the city. He dies during the 3 days pillage and plunder. So he got his wish. So there it is. It fell in one of the greatest battles ever fought. So what does it mean? Why did I say it's the greatest battle? Here's a young guy. It's just a kid from Renaissance Fair. But, I mean, that's what Christopher Columbus would have looked like when he was 2 years old, right? He was born in 1451. There he is. He's like, well, I guess my career of traveling the Silk Road is over because the tariffs are too high now. Those Turks are taking all the money. We need a new way of getting to the east. What are we going to do? Well, we'll sail there. And that's why, we call it the age of exploration. Like, oh, they were exploring, looking for wildlife. No, they're looking for money. It's about power, right? It's all about power. And who's poised? There's a little bit of a rabbit hole, but look, Venice is over here. Oh, come on. Yep. Venice is here, right there. Constantinople, right there. And it's still called Constantinople, even after it falls. But you're not going to get through to the east in a boat made by the Venetians. They're little Mediterranean boats. But the Portuguese, hey, we're already right here. And remember I talked about Spain. There was rage in the Christian world, even though the Christians were mostly responsible for the fall of Constantinople. They started the process in 1204. They hardly helped. The Pope's like, hey, if he goes, I will be the only bishop of Christianity. So he's like, yeah, good luck, Bishop of Constantinople. I got your back. So there's rage in the Christian world. And I showed you earlier in Spain, those Muslims are there. 1492, Christopher Columbus, he's on his way. They finally expel the Islamic forces from Spain. It's the Reconquista, is what it's called. And it's because of Constantinople falling. They would have probably been fine with them there for centuries longer if Constantinople hadn't fallen and there wasn't this rage. When Portugal's out exploring the world, they have a messianic mission. They want to destroy the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. That's what King Manuel I wants to do. He's like, I want to go find spices and destroy the holy cities, and not necessarily in that order. So there's rage. There's a lot of rage. There's the Renaissance. It's already started, but it's in overdrive now because in Constantinople were all these books. And believe me, none of the plunderers were like, I can't wait till we get some philosophy books. They didn't want the books, so they stayed there. And people took them to Paris and Rome and Florence, and no one had seen many of these books. Many of them were in Arabic. It's Plato, it's Socrates in Arabic, but texts that had not ever been seen in Latin or Greek. So the Renaissance gets a big push. This is a very unfortunate consequence. It's called the Megali idea. And it came into play after World War I when Greece was on our side and the Ottoman Empire collapsed. And all of a sudden, in Greek politics, there was this drive to reestablish the entire Greek world. Now, you might remember my map earlier. It goes to Marseille. It's up in Crimea. They didn't want that. They just thought, hey, now we can get Thrace, Macedonia, Ionia, all these places we're going, we're Greek places. We're Greek places. So there's an idea that we'll get all that back. And Ernest Hemingway wrote a short story, literally a short, like a 1.5-page story, called On the Quiet Smyrna. And it talks about the unfortunate consequences when basically the British and the French said to the Greeks, hey, knock it off. You're complicating the process of letting the Ottoman Empire disintegrate. We're not trying to restore your empire. We're dealing with the other empire's fall. So it's an unfortunate consequence. The idea of the Third Rome. Rome was the first Rome. Constantinople was the second Rome. Well, what's the third Rome? Moscow, right? The Orthodox faith. We're the third Rome. This is the Byzantine slogan, the two-headed eagle. It's now the slogan. It's been many other empires' slogan. There's no more hammer and sickle, right? Soviet Union's gone. This is a symbol now of the Russian Empire as well. There's an election tomorrow in Turkey, as we already heard. If not both political parties, at least one of them, the events of 1453, I don't read Turkish, are likely embedded through much of his campaigning. Here is on the 566th anniversary, not one you would think would pop in anyone's mind. And here's what he said. Happy 566, because many Turks are recognizing it. They're recognizing it. I don't remember it myself, but this is what he said. Changed the flow of world history. May the souls of Fatih Sultan Mehmet, I saw the Fatih Sultan Mehmet kebab house today. It's still alive. And his heroic army rest in peace. Now I have here, oh, that's horrible. It's supposed to be a little video, but I don't think it's going to work with that resolution. Oh, it's like 30 seconds. I'll tell you what it was. It was a laser light show on the Hagia Sophia, I think on the 566th anniversary, with 1453 emblazoned across the top. Mehmet the Conqueror riding his horse. I mean, it was above a laser light show. You may have seen one of these before. There was also right here in the Galata port for, I think, 2018, an enormous screen with a reenactment of the battle. Tens of thousands of Turks came out and watched. They brought their families. This is as if it happened yesterday in this part of the world. And I think, and hopefully you do too, it's okay if you don't, I think it is the greatest battle ever fought. So hopefully you learned something. We're going to be in Turkey for a few more days. If we could listen to the campaign slogans in English, I'm sure we would hear the mention of Mehmet II, the Conqueror, May 29th, 1453. But now, from now on, when you hear about it, hopefully you'll know a few things that you found interesting. So thanks, everyone, for your time. I really appreciate it.